This is a show where the spirit has control. Straight talk, no chaser. So listen up close, get the medicine for your soul. Straight talk, no chaser. Telling you the truth before we hear the truth. Straight talk, no chaser. Come get all the blessings God got for you.
I'm smiling in my heart, okay?
We want to thank you guys again for joining us here, Straight Talk No Chaser. I'm the host, Pastor Marcus McCarr. Tonight or today, whenever you listen to this, we're about ready to hear an amazing testimony. We're about ready to talk about the very power of God. And I want you guys to welcome to the show for the very first time, Miss Amber Ring. Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
By the way, guys, she says she's nervous, but I don't believe it. She has her own Facebook Live that comes on as well. And as you guys can tell, we're doing things a little different here now. We're live. We were straight, audio. We're going live now. So you guys, there are going to be some real things that happen. Like just now, I dropped the cord I was holding in my hand a few minutes ago. Forgot to pick it up. So you'll see me bending and doing crazy stuff. But yes, welcome to the show again. Straight Talk No Chasers. I told you before, we're always going to give it to you how it really is. And God has truly been putting in my life people who have a true testimony, people who've been really touched by the power and the moving and the delivering power of God. So, Amber, let's first start out by talking a little bit about you, and then we'll lead up to your testimony. Because again, as I've told you before, it's an amazing thing God has done for you. And I believe he wants to use this podcast so that somebody's life may be touched. And so that somebody's life may be changed forever. So, Amber, where are you from? Who's the Amber we're talking to?
Okay. Well, I'm from California. That's about it. I'm from California. Okay, so I'm a product of a rape. I'm just going to get nitty gritty. I'm just going to get started. Just going to tell it. Okay, so my mom was raped when she was 15 by my grandfather's best friend. And so I grew up knowing the Lord. My mom was in a very abusive relationship for probably the first 9 years of my life. And through that time, I watched my mom get beat on, and he molested us. And just, so I spent my whole childhood from like battered women's shelter to battered women's shelter. And it's quite funny because after that happened, after that season of my life was over, I dove straight into the Lord. Like I dedicated everything. I just wanted to forget everything that was behind me. We finally got away from the perpetrator. And so my mom, she just dedicated her life to church, doing everything for the church, getting to know Jesus. And so my identity was in my mother, and to me at a young age. And so I began pastoring a youth group from the age of pretty much 11 years old up until I was 16.
How old were you when everything happened, when you were going from house to house or battered woman shelter to battered woman shelter? How old were you then?
Oh my God, that was my whole childhood. So I can remember probably back to when I was 3 and up until I was 9 or 10, we was on the run.
Really?
Yeah. And so
how many over you? How many kids did your mom have at that time?
Just 3 girls. I'm the oldest of 3. And then I have my 2 sisters. And that their dad is the one that obviously did all of this. Okay. And so it's really confusing because through this whole journey, after everything was said and done, my mom ended up forgiving him for everything. And then my sisters eventually went to go live with him when I was 15. And so anyways, we'll get into that in a moment. But
now going back, because you said a lot in that first few minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's no problem. That's no problem. We're going to go back and piece it out. When you said when you guys left the shelter at the age of 11, you ran straight to God.
Yes.
What made you even have an idea of God? What had happened that brought you to even have an idea of God?
Well, I can remember being a little girl getting behind a pulpit and trying to preach. My mother, she always knew the Lord, and she always trained us to know the Lord and to be in his presence. And so I fell in love with him, and I remember there was this one incident I want to say I was probably about 7 years old, but they were fighting. He was beating my mom up, and my aunt had came, and she put me and my cousin Chrissy out on the car, and we were just praying. And there was like a huge chain link fence, and so the car, we had to climb over the fence to go sit on the hood of the car, and my aunt like went in to rescue my mom. Well, me and my cousin, we just closed our eyes and we started praying. And this is going to sound like so crazy, but this was an encounter that I had with the Lord that like held on to me throughout everything that I've been through. But we started praying and we opened our eyes and we were floating in the sky. And I know that sounds like, whew, like nuts, but Jesus was carrying us. He was holding us, you know, and even at that young age, like I knew that like everything was going to be okay because he was going to protect us. And so that's when like my hunger for the Lord started. But, you know, it started out where I just wanted to make my mom proud because she had been through so much, you know. And so I loved the Lord, but it was more about at that time pleasing my mother and wanting to be a good daughter to her and wanting to help her, you know.
Yeah, I know when I was a kid, you talking about standing behind the pulpit. I used to go to church and try and wait till they get done, and so I could go up there behind it. And then I would go home. Remember those big, gigantic speakers that the parents used to have? Like right now, we got surround sounds with the little bitty speakers, but those big, gigantic speakers, that was my pulpit. My mom would get so mad at me because I'd be in the front room just going at it. And all I had in the room was me and a couple toys. And I'm just there preaching, the Lord called you here. Come find Jesus. And she'd be like, boy, if you don't be quiet. So I would do that. And so she took these speakers and she kind of put them in the corner, thinking I couldn't get back there. So I slid by, and I could still I remember that moment. She told my kids about that. So your daddy used to preach. I used to be like, boy, if you don't go somewhere and sit down. And I'm like, Mama, I just had it in me. It's always in us. It's just that as we go through life, things happen. Now, when I want you to understand something. I do believe you when you say what happened to you and your cousin, because I believe that God, he always provides us a way of escape. And I believe he also provides us comfort in the midst of a storm. So in the midst of the hell that's going on around us, if you would call on his name in the midst of all that you're going through, he'll still show up. That's why we can be at our lowest point and call on his name and he'll still be there. We talk about the prodigal son. We had the prodigal son. He was at his lowest point. Didn't see his father right, but he went home and his daddy, the Bible says he saw him afar off. And his daddy went out and he met him there. He knew him just by his walk, his silhouette. He didn't even see his face, as the Bible says, but he saw him afar off, which means he couldn't really tell him by face, but he saw how he walked. Your daddy knows you so much. He don't care where you've been. He's in the midst of your sin, in the midst of your slop. He'll still get you. He'll still be there. But we won't preach. We'll talk. We'll talk because we can preach.
I love that story, by the way. This is the year of the prodigal sons returning. That's what the Lord told me.
Yes, we're coming home. We're coming home. Now, when you take a look now at your life, you're here in the midst of all of that. But you said at age 11, you start leading a youth ministry.
Yes. It was my life.
Imagining everything is taken care of with your mom. You guys are out of that situation by now.
Yes. Okay. So after that situation happened, my mom ended up remarrying someone that was 3 years younger he didn't have any kids. So he took on my mom and her 3 kids, you know, and then we got involved with this church and that's where I became the youth pastor. You know, I wasn't like into the high school scene, you know. I did performing arts for like 8 or 9 years, but I was at the flagpole praying every morning, you know, and he was going to choir the fire. Yeah. Yes. And my dream was I wanted to be a dancer for Carmen. I don't know if you know who Carmen is.
Yes, my daughter loved Carmen. When she was a kid, I used to have to play. Remember when he had the scene, the whole movie where he was running through some parts of France, a terrorist, Paris? I had to replay that repeatedly because she would not let it go.
That's funny. Yeah, but that was my dream as a youngster. But life happens, you know, things happen. Yeah. I think a lot of it, because I come from a family of women preachers. My grandmother's a preacher, and she is like a fireball, you know. And she was preaching in Palm Springs back in the 80s, and she's still preaching. She's a pastor in New York now. But then you got my aunt, and then you got my mom. So I went on this whole, like, I was trying to live up to everything that they wanted me to be, you know. And then when I was 16. We'll get into it in a little bit, but there was just a lot of pressure, you know, and I think that me finding my identity in my mother, and not, I mean, I love the Lord, but I was doing it to please my mom. You see what I'm saying? It had to it had to become real to me, even though I thought at that time that it was real. Looking back now, I see that I might have known Jesus my whole life, but did I really know him? You know, was I really in love with him? And I think that that's when something clicked, when I decided, okay, I want to love him more than anything. That's when my life started to change, you know?
That's good. That's good. Because whenever we don't realize, especially when we're young, we don't really know it, but we've always been, as far as me, as far as boys, as far as kids that I know, we want to please our parents. Yeah. And we want to make sure that they're happy with us. Especially, well, let's digress a minute. Because when you think about it, really, when you come from a situation like what you came from, and I'm a child born out of wedlock, but also I'm a child that I had to grow up quickly because I was able to, I had older relatives that showed me way more than what I needed to know and had me get into things I didn't need to get into. But I was also, but I saw things. Remember I told you, went to the program where I was in, Upward Bound, and we had the students from Banneker, Dominguez Hills, and all over. Well, going home every day, I had to also, well, the days I went home, I should say, I would get off the bus at the corner of Pico and Fairfax. At that corner, once you walked off that bus, you were bombarded with drugs. People that wanted to sell you, people wanted to give you whatever you wanted just so they could get paid for it. So you had to go through that. And then also, you had to go through the point, because I was the only kid until I was 19. My father waited till I was 19 to have more kids. So I really had no one else to relate to. I tell people I'm used to being alone. And I think God prepared me for that too, as I've grown in life. Things that I do is kind of a lonely situation at times in my own mind, because you can't have a lot of people around you doing what we do all the time. So, but anyway, going back, because I'll give my own testimony. This is about you. It's about Amber Ring tonight.
It's about Jesus.
But no, he's taken our lives and totally changed it. But going back to you and what you were just talking about, when we go through life and we have the experiences that we have the parents that we want to please, I tell people the greatest deliverance you can ever get is from people. And sometimes it's family and his parents, because we want to please them so much. And we don't really get told. But if you take a look in the Bible, Jesus himself, he began to read the day he was in the temple. He began to read from Isaiah. He began to describe the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Remember, he was describing to them everything that was going on. And he was telling them he found himself. And I always tell people, if he went and found himself in the scriptures, we got to go find ourselves in the scripture. It's not, and our parents they can pray us. They pray us through. And I appreciate my mom, my grandmother prayers. I'm still living off of those.
Yes.
But we got to get to where we have our own story. Yes. And so I understand that.
And see, what happened was it caused a lot of pressure on me to be just like them.
Oh, especially got a family full of preachers. Yeah, that's deep.
Yes. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get into this part of the story. When I was 16 and I was the youth pastor at that church, the Lord, this sounds crazy, but the Lord spoke to my mother and told her to leave my stepdad. Now, he was the first dad that I ever had in my life that was actually like a father to me. And they were married for about 10 years. But in one day, like literally in a blink of an eye, I lost everything. My sisters, my mother, the only dad that I ever had. Mm-hmm. And so I got so angry. I mean, I had a dance scholarship to San Ysidro College. You know, I had a boyfriend for 2 years. We were high school sweethearts. Mm-hmm. And then bam. And I was like, Lord, you know, I did everything right. I dedicated all of these years to you, you know, and where are you now? And here I was walking down the street at 16, nowhere to go. There was some complications with the place where my mom went. And so it was just the devil. It was all Satan. But because my mom told me, God told her to leave, you know, that planted a seed inside of me where, well, this must be God's will. And so it started everything that I thought, well, maybe it was God's will for me to be raped. Maybe it was God's will for my mom to get beat. And so it gave me this image of God as a father that was so distorted and so not true, because that's not who he is. That's not his character, you know? And so when that happened, I never even did a drug till I was 18 years old. Okay. Like, but I was so protected as a teenager. Like I wasn't allowed to do anything because my mom, you know, she just kept me close. Like,
Now you say that because I know some women, people that have done that. Do you think that was good for you to be that protected?
Well, it wasn't really her choice because a lot of it was me. Like, I mean, I couldn't even go over to my friend's house because I would cry. Mom couldn't get me. I just wanted to be with her to protect her. It was a really sick relationship, you know, not sick, but I mean, my mom, she was my best friend, you know? And so after that, and after I first did drugs for the first time, I was so ashamed. Like I didn't want to be around any of my family because I knew what I was doing was wrong, you know?
I got a question before we move on.
Okay.
Was the turning point to get you to the drugs? Was it when you guys were out on the street and you felt God had walked away from you?
Actually, no. I went to Ramona, California, which is down by San Diego, and I started to live with my aunt, and I started going to this church, and I met this girl at youth, and very nice girl, you know, and we went to her house afterwards, and there was drugs there.
Wow.
And, yeah, and so I was at the point, I had lost everything. I didn't care. I wasn't going to school. I dropped out of school. Here I was, 16 years old, you know. I dropped out of school, got my first job at Save On Drugs.
Save On.
My mom was living in Banning with her best friend, and so I was just, I don't know. I thought when I first started doing drugs, I thought that it was because of this boy that I liked. I'm just gonna be honest. So there's this boy, I liked him, and I was like, oh, I'm just doing it because he's here, you know.
Does he do it? Did he do them too?
Well, yeah, he was like the dealer or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, and so my mom ended up calling my stepdad that she was married to for 10 years, and I hadn't seen him in 2 years. Okay. She called him and told him I was so bad off and he needed to come get me because she didn't know what to do. So mind you, it's been 2 years since I seen him. He shows up in San Diego, forces me to get in the car with him, and then takes me to live with him in Fairfield, California, which is Northern California.
Yes.
And I was so angry. I remember.
But hold on a second. Going back, you missed him though. Going back a couple of years ago, you missed him. Now you were angry. You had to go back with him.
Okay. Well, see, this is what had happened. There's a bunch of key points that I haven't mentioned, but you know those moments in your life that they just cut you. They really cut you.
Yeah.
And I can remember me and my mom. We went out to lunch, and she said, "Amber, do you want me, or do you think that I should leave your stepdad?" And I said yes. At that moment, I said yes. I was a kid. I didn't know, you know, and she was just telling me all the things that God was showing her. And so we went to the house, and she started packing, and I went in the room to pack up my stuff, and he came in there, and he said, "So this is your idea?" And I was like devastated, you know, I'm like crying, and he said, "Well, you don't have a dad anymore." And so that was the last time that I had seen him.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that moment stuck with me forever, you know. And so after he came and picked me up, I mean, I remember I would get high and I would miss my mom so much that I would go, this sounds stupider than heck, but I would go and stand in the yard, like behind this tree, and look in through the window at her because I missed her so much, but I knew I couldn't see her, you know what I mean? I couldn't see her in that state. So when she had sent my stepdad to get me, it devastated me because I felt like she just gave up on me. Like she just threw me away, you know? And me and him were never really close throughout the marriage because he took my mom from me. Like that's how I felt, you know? But through this time we had gotten really close and things were going really good. Well, I started dating, I don't want to be rude or anything, but I started dating a black guy, and it offended.
Can you hear me? Because you just froze up.
Him, so he kicked me out, and so I'm out there in Sacramento, like oh my God, I really just lost and just diving deeper and deeper into drugs. That's when I realized that I had a problem. And then I ended up getting pregnant. And so I had my first son. And I remember when I went to go tell my stepdad, that I was pregnant, he kicked me off of his lawn. He told me to get out of there, you know. And my mom, she was all the way in San Diego, and so it was just so I don't even talk about these things, so it's really weird that I'm even talking about them. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you know what?
Sorry.
That's what. Remember, we started out by saying your story is going to help somebody that sees this get delivered, and the things you don't talk about to anybody else is going to be the things that's going to cause them to be delivered tonight. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate God giving us both the opportunity to hear and to share what's on your heart and what God has done for you and what He shared with you. So I appreciate it.
It's interesting because I just want to jump to the end, and I just want to be like, okay,
I know. I keep bringing you back, but I keep bringing you back because there's some intimate points that you're leaving out, and I know you are. But we got to tell them because it's going to also be therapeutic for you, but it's going to also deliver somebody else. Remember, I told you when I first met you that your story is powerful enough for somebody to be delivered. And I do believe this podcast is going to be the beginning for somebody being able to walk out of this situation. Somebody has gone through what you've gone through and they don't see an end. So thank you. So we're going to keep going. If you need to take a break, we'll pause it. If you need to take a break, we'll pause it.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good.
I'm good.
Now, you're pregnant. Everything's, again, all your walls seem to be coming in on you. Because normally, if you really look at a baby situation when you're pregnant, most people say, oh, it's so wonderful, it's so joyous. But you're not getting that response. And that drove you to do what?
Well, it drove me to change because when I found out I was pregnant, I never touched another drug for like 3 years. I quit smoking cigarettes, quit smoking weed. I got my life together. I started working for a real estate company.
Oh, wow.
The baby's father, he didn't work, of course, so I took care. That's when I started, started my grind, if you want to call it that. I've always been the worker, And so I was with his dad for almost 3 years. We were together. But, those moments where you're just like, well, I don't know if I can say it like that. Okay, so during the course of our relationship, I ended up getting pregnant again, okay? And he didn't want any more babies. He didn't want to get married. He didn't want any more babies. And unfortunately, I had to have an abortion, and that devastated me because I had been against that my whole entire life because, my mom should have aborted me. Like, that's how I always felt. She was going to be a model and, at 15 for 17 magazine, just all this, and I ruined her life. She should have just aborted me, So I grew up thinking that way. And so when I had to have an abortion, it killed something on the inside of me. Of course, I've healed from those things now. And so after the abortion, I just got sick of him, just playing Xbox all day, never working. I'm, doing everything, taking care of everything. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I deserve better.
Yes.
Well, we always would get into fights, but, he came back the next day after that fight and said he was moving out. And I was like, what the heck? Like I didn't expect that. And so he left me. And for about 2 years, he would come whenever he wanted, I'd cook, we'd, would do whatever. And then he would leave. And it was just like this tug of war with my heart. And I couldn't do it anymore. And so I ended up meeting my daughter's father, which was just the enemy, straight up the enemy. But I mean, I fell head over heels for this kid. He was 18 when we met, and I was just barely 21. And it became very toxic, very sick. I was with him for about 6 months. Come find out, he was facing jail time, never told me about it. So he ended up getting incarcerated.
Wow.
So I had to wait for him for 7 months, which I did. And then when he got out, it was just over. It was just a downward spiral. We just started, I worked every single day. He never worked. I got him off probation. He was on supervised probation for 5 years. I paid all of his fines, but then it started getting really abusive. There was times he would hit me, or leave me for days. And drive me out to the middle of the desert and just leave me out there at like 3 in the morning. And so there's a
Wow.
lot of, yes, I've had to do a lot of healing with my deliverance pastor for this, because,
Mhm.
you know, when you're so traumatized, you erase those things, you know, but they affect you. And so until you can heal from those things, then they're going to continue to affect you. And so that had a lot to do with my drug abuse more recently.
Mhm.
But long story short, we were together for 10 years, and then he ended up going to prison for 3 years. And that's how I actually got out here, because when he was in prison.
Did you break out and you ran?
No. I wish that was the case. But man, oh Lord, help me talk about these things. Okay. So when he was actually in prison, I had never been arrested my whole entire life, never been in trouble, nothing. Okay. Well, we had gotten, before he went to prison, we had gotten pulled over, and we had a paraphernalia on us. And so I went, and I was in holding for 12 hours, but I got out and I got put on probation. Well, part of my probation was no contact with him whatsoever. I couldn't be around him. We lived in the same place, you know. So they told me if they caught me around him, that I would go to jail. So I'm like, whatever, we're going to run. I'm going to continue to be around him, and you guys will never catch us. Well, so he got caught, and he went to jail. And so my crazy butt, you know, I like go visit him. And while I went to visit him in the jail, he told them that I had warrants. And so they arrested me at the visit.
Wow. He ratted you out.
Yes, I was completely betrayed, because he was jealous and he didn't want me, you know, he was a control freak, you know. But so me never being ever in jail or anything, I was so terrified, you know, and it was the scariest time of my whole entire life. And after I got arrested that night, I ended up getting sentenced to 6 months in prison. They weren't going to give me more probation. They weren't going to let me out. And I was like, oh my God. I remember being in jail, and I did like my mascara with coffee, you know, and I went to the courthouse and I was crying, and all you could smell was coffee, like in the whole courtroom. But it was the best thing. Like I got to see, and I really felt like the Lord is calling me to the jail ministry, because I had no phone calls or no letters the whole time. I was only down for 3 months, but to me, that was a lifetime. Okay. But during that whole time, I mean, I would preach to the wind, you know, I was giving everybody prophetic words. I was chasing down the guards to tell them what the Lord's saying, you know, and they would just look at me like I'm crazy. But God was so good to me during that time. And I really thought, you know, I was going to be changed forever after that. I really did. And, you know, then I got out, and he was in jail, and I hadn't had to deal with that yet. So we were like writing each other. I was putting money on the phone, and I went back to work. And
hold on a second. You went to jail for being not supposed to be in contact with him. You get out and get back in contact with him.
Yes. Very stupid, very, very dumb. And everyone was totally against it, you know, but I didn't care. I loved him, you know. I loved him more than I loved God. And I wasn't ready to accept the fact that, you know, maybe this was God trying to separate me from him, you know. But anyways, as we continue to talk, he had this brilliant idea. He's like, well, hey, you need to uproot your life and move to Georgia, and then I'll transfer. When I get out, I'll transfer up there, and then we'll just make this whole new life in Georgia. So I left everything. Everything. And it was God's hand. I see it now, but it was really hard for me to leave all my friends and my church and everything. But I wasn't really doing good, because I had got back on drugs and just down a downward spiral again. Well,
did anyone even notice this discernment? Did anyone even discern you were back on them while you were?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, I lost, man, there's so much stuff that happened. So me and my mom, when I got out of prison, I moved in to my old house, which was where my mom and her husband were remodeling the house across the street from, because they owned
new husband. New husband.
It's a long story. Sorry.
No, take your time.
Yeah, they've been married about 8 years now. But anyways, I can't get into that because that's not my story to tell.
Yeah.
But through that time, me and her old man or whatever, got into a lot of arguments, and I actually had lost my mom for a little bit because of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved out of that place, moved in with my best friend and his mom and his family, and I started taking care of his brother and sister and his mom. And I'm just gonna say it. Okay, so I started falling for this guy.
The friend?
Yes, he was he was my best friend like the whole time that her dad was in prison, and he had a girlfriend. Now this is gonna get complicated, okay? I don't even know if he had a girlfriend, but she had a husband, and she was a surrogate mother and pregnant with twins, okay?
Wow.
It sounds really bad, but so we would be great, and then every 2 or 3 days she would call and he would leave and go with her and then come back like everything was normal. So it was again this, you know, tug of war and me not being good enough no matter what I did, no matter how hard I loved, no matter, you know, because I always showed Jesus wherever I went. Mm-hmm. It got to the point I was actually going door to door, knocking on people's doors and asking them, you know, can I do this cleanup in your yard because God loves you and he wants to bless you today. You don't need to pay me. I just need to work because I don't want to be in my mind, you know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And people would look at me like, this chick is nuts. But
so you was trying to do something. You were trying to stay busy.
Yes. I had to, you know? But, so anyways, I lost communication with my mom and I ended up coming out here, and I did good for about 6 months, you know, doing the REACH program with my aunt and feeding the homeless. And I found this deliverance ministry through my cousin, and I had a couple deliverance sessions, and things were going great. And then I guess I just wasn't done, you know. And
what was going on at the time? Do you remember what was going on at the time you had to relapse?
Well, her dad had lied to me, ended up getting out of prison in Arizona, getting another girl pregnant. And so it was just like this huge plan from the beginning. And because I was so infatuated, or whatever you want to call it, because I know it wasn't love now, but my heart was so set on that. And when he did that to me, that was it. Just like, I didn't feel, I mean, I love my kids and I'm not trying to be selfish. I'm just being honest. I just felt like there was no reason to try anymore. Like I had really been a failure at everything my whole life, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I had to work through those issues of realizing I wouldn't even want, you know? And that's part of my testimony now is I have been able to say, you're crazy. I know what God has for me and it ain't in that direction. So see you later, you know? I never thought I'd be able to say no.
That's a major turning point because what the enemy took you through led you into, it sounds like periods of depression, low self-esteem, and also it sounded like it almost brought you to the point to where you wanted to give up and give in. Yeah. But that's the enemy's job, though. His job is to get us distracted and also bring us counterfeits.
Yes.
God has the actual person there for you, but the enemy's job is to make sure you find a counterfeit because he wants to distract you and keep you from going. I tell people, because the Bible talks about offenses of being offended. And you look at that word offend, it's made of 2 words, off end. You don't want to be, the enemy's job is to off end you from your destiny. His job is to make sure you don't get to where you're called to be. Yes. So he sends you counterfeits along the way. Hopefully you'll get attached and you don't leave.
Yes.
But you had enough God drawing you out of that thing though, but we ain't there yet. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, because there was times in our relationship where I knew that God told me to leave. Mm-hmm. I knew the voice of God and I knew that he told me to leave. I just never could do it. I was choosing to stay rather than choosing to listen to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so I really feel like, you know how Romans 8:28 says the Lord works everything out for your good, you know, for those are called according to the purpose. Uh-huh. And I really feel like that's what the Lord did is he like picked me up with this crane and moved me to safety when he took me to prison. You know, that's what started this whole thing for deliverance. But when I got out here and I ended up getting on drugs, it was worse than it had ever been because I really was alone. Like these streets in downtown Rome, you know, like I had never experienced anything like that. You know what I mean? And
I was surprised because I lived in Rome and then I moved away and I came back And people were telling me, dude, you don't want to go down there. So what do you mean, dude? That's just down where we're talking about, that street. That's just you know, we got the Wendy's, we got this, we got that. Dude, what's going on there? Like, you don't want to go down there like a no-kid. I drove that way anyway, and I saw a place that you couldn't see into and you couldn't see out of, I guess, if you were in there. I'm like, no, that's totally not the same place I left. I left at the age of 18 out of Rome. And
Wow.
and we didn't have things like that. Well, I guess it was there. The element was always been there, but it hadn't grown to the point to where it is now.
Yeah.
But we come here to destroy that thing, though. But go ahead.
Yes.
But go ahead.
Well, I just remember, you know, getting to this point to where I didn't care. And so I didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't care. To me, nobody loved me. How could God love me? Nobody loves me. But I'm going to continue to keep loving God, and I'm going to continue to keep saying He's a good Father. I'm going to continue to go to Reach every Thursday, you know?
That's amazing, because you were going through what you were going through, continue to say He doesn't love me, He doesn't care, but you're going to continue to say it back to Him, though.
Yes.
That just totally goes against everything.
Well, because to me, it was my fault. Everything in my life was my fault. It wasn't God's fault. It was something that I did. I was guilty. And so that's another way that the enemy kept me ensnared for so long, you know.
The power of the blood. He never let you see the true power of the blood.
I just think it's crazy, because I can remember, you know, this was only December 15th when everything changed for me. And but I can remember just, you know, feeling so hopeless. And, you know, there was a couple of suicide attempts that I had, and God saved me and delivered me out of those. And it was always my heart, you know, even when I remember I would be high and they would ask me to get up and preach at Reach, you know, and I would go up there. I'm like, okay, don't move your mouth. You got to be focused, you know, like don't talk too fast.
You know what? I can be honest about this now. I know I have never told it live like this. I've told it in my other recordings once, 1992, maybe 93. They asked me to come do this program back here in Rome. And you ever heard of Freaknik? Freaknik was a big party they threw in Atlanta that lasted for almost from like Wednesday to like Sunday. It was HBCU colleges would all flock to Atlanta. You have the rappers with those concerts. Piedmont Park would be covered. Decatur Parks would be covered. So we just partied all weekend. This happened to be the same weekend. And I was like, but you know, I wanted to fit in with my fellas. So I'm like, you know, guys, are we going? Da, da, da. And they're like, yeah, we're going. And I'm like, crap, how are we going to go to that? And I got to be in church at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Said, okay. So we started partying on Friday. Said, okay, I'll go home Saturday. Saturday came. I went home to shower to get back up to go out. And then we get up. We partied to 3 a.m. on Saturday night to Sunday morning. I go in. I said, hey, my buddy is driving me because I can't drive at this moment. I can't drive. Can't make it to church if I had to. So, dude, you got to drive me in. He drives me. His parents come to town. We had to pick his parents up on the way to church. We had to roll the windows down because we knew we supposed to smell like breweries. I didn't shower, put on cologne, and I'm like, oh God, please don't let nobody get close to me. Please don't let them get close to me. I get to church, and this is a Baptist church, and so I had to be in the pulpit. I walk up there and I sit down. I take it back. I walk in late, number one. Walk up there, I sit down, and it's like, please, no one, please, just get me up here quick as possible. And I'm thinking in my head, Lord, I'm repenting already, though. So I'm like, Lord, I'm so sorry, please. And I was like, let the mics break, let the sound go down. Do something, Lord, so I don't have to do this. And I did that. And I didn't touch another pulpit again until 1997. Because I told God I wouldn't do that again and not be true.
Yeah.
Because I knew from a young age, because I was teaching young adult Sunday school class. Actually, adult Sunday school class at the age of 15. So from the 9th grade all the way to high school, I'm teaching adults. And then I go to college and lose my mind. And then I get back and they brought me up there that day and I was like, and I leave the church. And I can tell you this going back. Someone sung a song That song seemed like it went on for 20 minutes. I just wanted it to be over. And they finally finished the song. I leave and I go straight to the car. I don't stand and talk to them. I go to the car and I begin to repent. I go back to my dorm and I say, God, I don't ever want to do that again. Take this desire from me. Because I knew I was called to minister. I knew that always. I wanted him to take that from me. I want to I always tell people I'll be a great deacon. I'll do whatever the pastor wants me to do. I'm a server. I like to serve. Just let me serve. And he wouldn't. And from 1993 to 1997, I wouldn't do it. I would go to church, and I messed around and had a Pentecostal experience. I messed around and went to that church, and they took me to the back, and they used to tarry with you then. So they had me, Jesus. I'm like, I just want to go home. Jesus. And man, by like that 30th minute, somewhere in between there, I began to speak in an unknown tongue. And it was a powerful moment. I was never the same. And so at that moment, I began to grow and begin. Still, I was running from the call because the call meant I was going to really give up everything I was doing. Because as long as I'm saved, I could do a little bit and go back home and repent. But I honored this position so bad. So much. I honored that position so much that I could not really, I didn't want to bring shame to the position.
Yes.
So I was like, God, okay. Finally, when I finally said yes in 1997, I was like, okay, Lord, okay, I'll stop. Since you won't let me sleep, it got to the point where I couldn't sleep. I thought I was going to die. I just knew I was going to die and not make it. And I said, God, I give up. I quit. I won't keep running. I quit. And becoming a pastor. Now that was a whole nother experience. I'm like, God, I know there's like 5,000 other preachers you can call to do this. But every time I attempted, I didn't want to come to Rome. I'll be honest. Because I've lived in big cities. Like I said, I've lived in Los Angeles, lived in Michigan, lived in Atlanta, lived in Kennesaw. I've lived in a big, powerful area with people going here and there. And he said, come back to Rome. And I'm like, but God, I left Rome at 18. Why I got to go back there? It was nothing to do there. But there's a work here to be done.
Yes. And
our testimonies and I believe our stories will be able to deliver somebody. But getting back to you, because this is all about you.
It's all about Jesus.
It's all about Jesus, but he's coming through you and how you continue to love him. Even though you had the mindset he don't love me. That's how would you break that down now?
Well, it was just pure stupidity, really, because he loves me more than anybody, you know? Mm-hmm. And see, the thing that always had me was, we tend to take Bible verses sometimes and distort them. And so that Bible verse about, come as you are, I always thought God says, come as you are. He loves you anyway, and just come as you are. If he could use a donkey, he could use me. And not that I didn't honor the position like what you were saying. I just knew that even in my dirtiness, if I would say yes to him when other people are saying no, because that's what it's all about. And he's looking for those people right now that are willing to say yes. And he does say, come as you are, but he says, come as you are and let me purify you. Let me cleanse you. Let me clean you up. And so I don't know. I think that the enemy is very, very smart in his attacks. And I think it's, very important for us to realize the enemy. Because now, before I could never spot the enemy, but now I could see him coming from a mile away, and maneuver around his attacks. And not that I'm saying I'm anybody special, I'm not saying that, but you literally have to discipline yourself and train yourself up and get into the word and find out who you are, find out who Jesus is for real, and
I know who he is for real. That's the thing. I believe that, and I believe you. God is getting ready to raise up a people who have decided God is you or nothing else. I'm not here to play. I'm not playing church any longer. And I believe when we come out of this COVID-19 thing, because we're coming out, as we get ready to come out and you go back, there's going to be a separation of people that have been moving on talent and those that are moving under the power of God. And I believe wholeheartedly that those places that have a lot of talented people are going to wake up and look around and say, why is there still nobody else here? Because they've gone and found where the power of God is. That's why while we're in this moment of COVID-19, or those people that you can't go like you want to go, you can't freely go, you should be seeking God's face, because he wants to talk to his people. He wants to talk to the body of Christ. He wants to share something with the body of Christ. And so tonight, December 15th, 2019 for you.
Yes. Changed my whole life. I will never forget that
Tell
day.
me what happened that day.
Well, I got to backtrack a little bit. I think you might have heard this story on one of my lives. I'm not sure, but it was December 14th, and it was probably about 3:30 in the morning. And
You're a night owl, by the way.
Well, I was high, so just being honest. But I would walk from ding ding store to ding ding store, just because I just didn't enjoy being around anybody, because all I wanted to talk about was the Lord, and nobody gave a flip. Nobody cared, and I just got so sick and tired of just giving myself to people. And
now you said something that most people are not going to understand what you're talking about. Ding ding stores.
The gas stations were slot machines.
Yeah, I just found out what that meant not long ago. So I know a lot of people are like, what's talking in Rome? They got a ding ding. So what is that?
Well, I didn't know what it was either. I didn't know what it was either, but it quite interestingly, I would go there and I would talk to the clerks, and they would become my friend, and I would talk to them about Jesus, and it was better than being at the dope man's house. Or it's like every person that I met, all that they wanted to do was for sexual relations or something. And so I got so sick and tired of being an item, or of just I just got so sickened by everything, and all I wanted was Jesus, and I just wanted to be with him. And so I have this book, which I'm going to get into the story about how I found this book, and it really was the final straw to get me back to my church. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it was December 14th. It was probably about 3:30 in the morning. I was tired. I was hungry. I was sick of men, and I was walking, and it was raining. It was like pouring down rain, and it was freezing, Mm-hmm. And I had my new J's on, so I was really, really mad at God. I was like, God, why is it raining? And then come find out they were like knockoff J's. I was a little bit upset about that too, but they were given to me, so I didn't care. But so I said, God, this is it. If you do not stop letting me make a fool of myself, because people would ask me, where's your God? If he loves you so much, why is your life, and I continue to say he was good, and it would irritate people, and it would make them so mad. Mm-hmm. Well, I had just had it at this moment. I said, God, if you don't do something now, I'm turning my back on you, and I will never, ever, ever, ever speak your name again. And I was serious, and I was crying, and I winded up in North Rome at this abandoned recycling center. And I went in there to seek shelter from the rain. And there was this ray of light. I don't know, it must have been moonlight or something, but it was shining down on this bin of books. Mm-hmm. And I walked over there. It's a really thin book, and it said, "Make haste, my beloved." So, I thought it was a love story. So I'm like, all right, I could do something positive, in my life. And I started reading it, and it was a book of the call of the bride of Christ. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I probably read that book about 15 times in one night. Actually, in a couple of hours, because I went to church the next morning. But when I started, I just developed this posture where, I was the righteousness of Christ. It didn't matter what was going on around me. It didn't matter what people said about me. None of it mattered. All that mattered was being with Jesus and pleasing Jesus and knowing that he is the peace inside of me. He is the joy inside of me. He is the light inside of me. I didn't need anyone else or anything else. And so, I had gotten ready to go to church on Sundays multiple times. I would get ready, and then I just would never have the guts to go. Mm-hmm. Because my pastor is very rough around the edges a little bit. I mean, he's an amazing pastor, and he's my spiritual father, and God used him. But we had just been through a lot, and so I had this shame. I didn't want to go there. But this day, I got ready. I left everything, all my stuff, and I had a couple different rides set up. Well, they all flaked on me. So I was like, man, I got to get to church. I couldn't explain it. And I walk up to a stranger, and I'm like, look, will you please take me up Kingston Highway to my church? Please, brother. And he said yes. And that was it. it was like there was this hook on the inside of me, and it was like reeling me in.
The
It was just,
drawing of the Lord.
yes, it was just God. And then after church, you know, I'm just broken. And at the time, my cousin had my daughter. She had took guardianship of her, and you know, I always said that when I lost my daughter, that was it. I was just going to blow my brains out, you know. And so there's a lot of pain there. But my pastor, every Sunday after church, he meets with people. You know, he sits down and he'll talk. And sometimes we would talk till midnight. You know, it doesn't matter. Whatever gets the job done. And he said, well, you're not leaving tonight. He's like, this is a choice for you right now. You can stay here. Everything's paid for. You know, you could live in the nursery and get your life right. And I was like, I didn't even second guess it. I just was so happy to be home, you know? And I never had an urge to do anything since then, you know, not smoke weed. I quit smoking cigarettes on Christmas Day. Like, I don't know. It was just gone. And to this day, it amazes me. Like when I just look back at my life, because it's only been like 9 months, you know?
I applaud your pastor, because he did something that most churches don't do, unfortunately. He opened up the doors. When we say the doors of the church are open, he really opened the doors. And I speak to all the pastors now. When there's going to be people flocking to the church that don't look like us, that don't smell like us, they've been through things we've never been through, but we have to be prepared. We have to be ready. We have to have open, we say the doors swing open on open hinges. They really got to swing, and God's going to try you on this, because he's told you before, this house is a house for refuge. This is a house of medicine. This is a house of where people can come back and get, supposed to be a house they can come back and find the power of God resting in there, so people can be delivered and set free. But we've made it an entertainment center. And once you get past the entertainment, you have nothing else. So pastors, I speak to you tonight. There's people who are waiting to come to your house, and they've been there, but you haven't had the discerning spirit to draw and hold them there and get them delivered. We have got to do better. We've got to get in a position to receive them and take care of them. I applaud you, Pastor, and tell him I said so. Pastor Bakar said I applaud him. But now
I really feel like, just to go along with what you're saying, if it wasn't for Jesus, but if it wasn't for my pastor and his wife saying yes to God, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And it didn't stop with just letting me come in and them, you know, feeding me and taking care of me. But I mean, they helped me get a job. They, you know, he would sit down and have meetings with me on deliverance and just listen and just love me. Like, they gave me the best Christmas that I ever had, you know. And we went to a movie theater. This is crazy because you just don't see pastors doing this. Well, he took me to the movie theater with him and his family, and he had, I guess, like $7 in his bank account. And so we all got a soda, and we're all sharing it. We're all putting in different straw in the same cup of soda, you know? And I was just like, every moment like that, just like.
That's what it's about. We're supposed to take care of I know I'm sitting crazy, but anyway, I just realized that. I don't even care. But when you really truly love God, somebody told me the other day, we went to lunch, and he bought me lunch. I said, why'd you buy me lunch? He said, dude, you've taken me out to eat lunch a couple of times. I said, I did? I didn't remember. He said, that's when you know someone's a giver. Yeah. But they don't keep tab. They don't keep up with how it goes. They just give their last to take care of someone else. There's a young man that plants into my ministry who lives, I think he lives in Ohio. Yeah, lives in Ohio. And he helps, and when he plants, I do some things for other people. I do some things that need to be done, because it's not about me. It's not for me. It's not something I'm the hoard for myself. And that building's not really his building. He opened that building up to the children of God. He opened the building up to you. And I believe wholeheartedly that that's how the church is supposed to be. We've got these great buildings. These great buildings should be filled every day. Not with just your church services, but there's some places that people just need to come lay down. Yeah. You need to become ministered to. And we say
so funny because during church, it's funny because during church, if you want to sleep on the pews, we let you. So, you know, we're a small congregation, but I mean, literally on Sundays, we don't even go home till after midnight, because we all just fellowship and spend time together, you know. And our sign even said, bring COVID here, because we're supposed to be laying hands on the sick. We're not supposed to be afraid of it, you know? And I don't know, it's like, I'm so grateful for my church family, man.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm out here in Ranger and my car just broke down yesterday, and I don't know how I was coasting going up hills. So I was praising the Lord. I was coasting going up a hill so I could pull it over, you know?
Uh-huh.
But what you're talking about with him opening the church, it's not his building, you know, it's the Lord's. And that goes with our finances. That goes with everything in our life, man. Like, you know, with everything that I get, we're here to be a blessing. We're here to represent the Lord and not to hoard it for ourselves, like what you were saying. And so when we realize that nothing is our own anyway, that it all belongs to God anyways, you know, it's beautiful. And I get so much joy out of knowing that God chose me. You know, God chose you, bro. Like, he chose you. You know, like, before the foundations of the earth, he thought of you, he thought of me, and he chose us to be those that love him. And I think what he's doing right now in this lockdown is he's raising up those people that might not look good to the religious folk, but they love him. They have a heart after loving the Father. And that's all that matters, you know? So I'm excited.
Yes, and you've done an amazing job tonight. I thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me, sir. Pastor.
But you know what? You keep calling me sir.
Respect.
I don't know what your age. I never even asked. But
I'm 33.
my dad's at home. Well, no, I appreciate the respect. That shows you, as we say, you got good home training. But no, thank you so much, guys. We want to welcome and thank Amber for being with us tonight. Amber, we can't let this be your last time though, because again, I enjoyed talking with you, and I believe you have a lot to tell that you didn't tell.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Yeah. So thank you again. I know you were nervous. Guys, you don't know how nervous she was, but she came through. We appreciate you for taking time here. Now tell people, because you do something on Facebook, tell them where to find you.
Tell them where to find me?
Yes.
What do you mean? Oh, my Soul Check?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Oh,
yes.
There's just a page called Soul Check out of Rome, Georgia. You can get on that, or you can just get on my personal profile, which is Amber Ring in Rome, Georgia.
Okay.
Is that it?
You're on how many days a week?
Well, I was doing it every single day for about a month straight, and right now the Lord has me kind of just soaking some stuff up. So it's whenever the Holy Spirit gives me that unction to do it. But I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be making a new schedule here pretty soon. So just keep a lookout for it.
Be on the lookout, guys, for Amber Ring. Amber, thank you again for being with us here on Straight Talk No Chaser. Guys, there's something on here. Subscribe for us. Subscribe with us. We're going to continue to give you great content as always. And look for Amber again on the show. Look for more exciting guests. We have, I'll just name drop just a bit. We have Dr. J, the Apostle Dr. J. We was with him last night. He was on a podcast we were all on last night. We enjoyed him tremendously. We have Prophet Butler coming back. We have so many more people coming back. And then we have a couple of finance guys coming out to be with us. So thank you so very, very much again for being with us here on Straight Talk No Chaser. You guys have a wonderful evening. God bless.